Alrighty guys, my name is Jape Time, oh yeah, and today we are here with Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4. Such a popular game to this day that came out in 2005. Resident Evil 4 was one of the first games that came out in the Resident Evil franchise that made the game much more stressful than the rest of them. This game had some of the most iconic characters and iconic areas, from the village overrun with tons of zombies, to the chainsaw men walking around trying to saw Leon's head off. This game was definitely a classic for many people. I still remember watching my brother playing it and thinking, man, this must be the hardest game I've ever seen. And now it has been reborn. Almost 18 years later, the release of the Resident Evil 4 remake has finally come out. And boy, did they do a great job. Playing the Resident Evil 4 remake is something that I will never forget. I loved the first one so very much, and I remember putting hours and hours into that game, and seeing it finally being remade was super exciting to me. Especially with Resident Evil 2, the remake, where they had the zombies have tons and tons of health. I had originally thought that they were going to somehow implement that into Resident Evil 4, but they did not. And the work that they did to be able to keep it almost hard to kill the zombies while still having tons of zombies around was fantastic. Even though I played tons of Resident Evil 4, playing the remake still made it just as stressful as I played it the first time. Having to run around and make your way through a whole group of zombies while having to dodge all these attacks and making sure Ashley doesn't get snatched up was very stressful, for me at least, as a kid. They did a really great job with keeping the feel of Resident Evil 4 alive in this game. Now, there's a difference between a remaster and a remake. I sort of went into this game thinking it more as a remaster almost. I was expecting to see a lot of familiar places, but boy was I wrong. Sure, there were of course some places that felt familiar, but no place was the same. The best way I can put it is this game grabbed the original places and totally changed up and put the weight of the situation on it much more. I will say there were a couple of parts that were skipped out on, some parts that people did not like and I didn't really like, so honestly I didn't really mind that too much. But even with this being so much more different than the first one, it still felt like Resident Evil 4, and they pulled it off so well. It had the charm of newer Resident Evil games with the puzzles and the rewards, and of course the super good looking graphics. I have a TV that's not the best. I do have a PS5, but I play on a TV that isn't super good. Even on that, it looked phenomenal. There are some sections in the game that look so realistic and real that I almost felt as if I was watching a live action movie. I came in playing this game to experience the charm of Resident Evil 4, the original, with all of these new mechanics, and that is exactly what I got. There were some big changes, of course, and new mechanics that were introduced. For example, the knife in the first game was infinite durability. You can just go ham on a zombie however you'd like. And at first, I didn't really think that was going to be that fun. Having to deal with the durability and upgrading it didn't seem like it would be such a good idea versus upgrading your guns and such. But boy was I wrong. I, for some reason, never figured that they would add in the knife counters that they had in Resident Evil 2. And the knife counters really carried me through the entire game, honestly. Every new mechanic was satisfyingly put in, and it didn't really have a big impact on the gameplay. It still felt very similar to the first game. I was also very happy with the work they did on the songs and the soundtrack. I know there is a mode that you can change it to, so that it resembles more of the original soundtrack with like in-game sounds and music. But one of my favorite songs from the original Resident Evil 4 was the song that would play in the background whenever you would go and access your typewriter. It's called the Serenity. Every time you would enter a safe house and type on the typewriter, it would play this song. Now, as I said before, Resident Evil 4 was a very stressful game, so these times of safeness felt super nice, and this song really added on to the calmness of the room. But even though it was a nice breath of fresh air every time you heard this song, the song almost makes a feeling of there's still so much more to go in this game. I'm not done yet. This is simply just a quick break from the chaos and madness. Now, I remember seeing a tweet that someone said they have seen like clips and gameplay of the Resident Evil 4 before the game came out, and they'd said that nothing that they have seen so far looks familiar or looks like it was in the first game. And I think that really summarizes how this game was. It just felt so much more in depth with each and every area. And of course, there were some areas that I knew I remembered. But even with that, there were whole new areas added in. And that's why I say that there's a difference between a remaster and a remake. This was a remake. It wasn't made to get these familiar places and then bring them back. It was made to grab these old places, bring them into the game, and make them better. Make them more fun. And make it a little bit more enjoyable for the players. There were some parts of the original game that I really found annoying, and most of those were taken out. For example, the whole minecart area part of the game was completely changed, and I was pretty happy about that because that part was one of the most stressful parts of the game. Another big change that came in with the remake was there's so much more character dialogue. In the first one, there wasn't much besides grunts and Leon saying, "Follow me," and things like that, and also actually saying Leon loudly. But in this game, there was these little moments where Leon and Ashley would talk to each other, and they just felt so much more alive. There was much more character development in this one, and I feel like I almost felt more for this Leon. This Leon was definitely a quipper, and there's whole videos dedicated to some of the voice lines that Leon says. And I was just so glad that they really brought more life to these characters, because these were some of my favorite characters growing up. It was also lots of fun playing through the game and thinking like, alright, what's next? Alright, what's next? What could be next? And then having moments where you're like, oh, okay, this is next, and then being completely wrong. And it was a lot of fun to have no idea what was next. Some areas were put in different places. Some whole parts of the game you played with another person that you originally played by yourself. And it was just so many changes that felt right. Everything that was added and the way they structured the story really felt like it fit into the game. And I think they did a really good job to implement the newer feeling of the Resident Evils into an older game. I also had a lot of fun parrying the zombies. It made it so that you can have a whole nother attack to be able to protect yourself from. Because there were times in the original game where if the chainsaw man got you, it was over, head off, head clean off, and you were just dead. But now you had a chance this time. You can use your handy dandy kitchen knife to be able to stop a chainsaw from murdering you. One thing that was a little annoying about the parrying was that if the zombies were to do their grab attack, no matter what, even if you parried at the right time, they were gonna be able to grab you. I think even at times they have like super armor, and if you don't shoot them at least in the head, they still are able to grab you, and that's just free damage no matter how fast you stab them. And that was really annoying to have to deal with, because there's so many times that I just wanted to parry it so bad, because that damage meant I had to use a whole new herb, and that was a little annoying. But I think that's the only thing that I really had a problem with. And the regenerators. A lot of the classic bosses were also just as fun. I also noticed that they kept in the mechanic of having like super strong weapons means that bosses are much more easier to kill. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm pretty sure if you shoot a boss with an RPG, it's still an instant kill, and I'm glad they kept that in, because that was another thing that I feel like made Resident Evil 4 a different game. Overall, the game was so much fun, and I couldn't stop playing it. I had to stream it like 3 days in a row because I just wanted to see the ending and see how it felt to beat the game once again, but in the remake. Because every time I beat the game, it just felt so nice. It felt like dang, I really went through all that, man, and I finally finished it, and that's something I was really happy to feel once again. I'm excited to keep putting more and more hours into this game because it definitely deserves it. They kept the replayability in the game by letting you take your guns from a finished game to a new game, and I'm excited to see if they were going to make more DLC because I would love to see also the Mercenaries mode. That mode was a lot of fun. Either way, I'm going to keep on playing it because this is definitely a momentous occasion for Resident Evil fans, I think. This remake was probably one of the best I've ever played, and I'm really glad that they decided to make it. But I think that wraps up my thoughts on the Resident Evil 4 remake. I want to thank you all so very much for watching. I want to thank you all so much for the views and the support. It really helps me continue making these videos whenever I see a lot of people that are enjoying them. So I want to thank you all so much for that, and I hope you all have a good day, evening, night, morning, afternoon, all that good stuff. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.